Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Futureproof, the podcast, hosted by myself, Taylor Nathaniel, one of the directors here at CLM. And as you guys know, Futureproof is where I have conversations with a number of renowned automotive executives that have achieved a lot within the industry, and they're coming onto this platform to share the stories of how they've transformed and future-proofed organizations. Today, I have a well-renowned automotive executive on the show, worked for leading companies such as Faurecia, Philips, and more recently, the Technoplast business. The guy I have on today is Manfred Kwade. Manfred, I'll let you come in and introduce yourself now and go into some more detail.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm, in the meantime, an automotive senior. And for the last 20 years, I have been doing intensively restructuring and cost optimization. Companies I was managing and improving was first HP Pelzer, then it was Philips Automotive Playback Modules, which I brought into a joint venture with a Taiwanese company. Then I moved back to Philips to manage automotive lighting or automotive lamps. Then I moved on to Faurecia, first to be the operations and industrial vice president for seating. Then I was delegated to the US to become the president and CEO of Faurecia Interior Systems and manage the turnaround. Then I was redelegated to France to manage a global group project. And then I was fed up a bit with the corporate structures and I wanted to do something smaller. So I became the president CEO of White Plus, a Swiss company active in the plastics environment, decorative parts and parts under the hood. And after 10 months, I became the chief operating officer of the Technoplast group as a whole. The group has been divested. And I didn't see no future for me anymore, so I decided to resign. And I'm currently the automotive partner for WP Board Services.
Okay, perfect. Manfred, thank you for introducing yourself. And Manfred, obviously we've just talked about some large-scale companies there, as you mentioned, turnarounds, etc. But when we look at your overall career, what was the reason for you wanting to get into the automotive industry?
Well, actually, when I was a student, I was already working on a couple of projects with Opel and Rüsselsheim. So it was a natural. So there was never any other idea but to go into the automotive environment. And I did a couple of projects for Opel in planning, in project management, in product management. So I liked it. And so it was natural to go into the automotive industry.
Okay, and was the viewpoint always to either lead a region, lead a global organization as CEO, or did you have other aspirations when you first stepped in?
Well, actually, I have to be very honest with you. When I stepped into the automotive industry, I didn't have a clue what I really wanted to do. I had to learn in the course of times. It became clear very rapidly to me, irrelevant what I'm doing, I want to work international. And that was the most important thing for me. And other than this, at the beginning, I was not too focused on career or something like that, because I said to myself, focus on the, and if you are good in what you're doing, the career is going to come as a natural.
Okay. And growing through, obviously, you've come up in different positions, being responsible, European responsibility, the US responsibility. For you, what has been the most interesting aspect? Is it leading the business? Is it a specific skill set? What's been the most interesting aspect?
The most interesting aspect for me was first to work with different cultures, to be able to bring different people from different cultures on the table and bring them together as a team. And second to that, I like the technology very much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what would you say then have been your proudest moments throughout your career?
My proudest moment in my career certainly was the transition of Philips Automotive playback modules into a joint venture with a Taiwanese partner.
Mm-hmm.
Doing this transition very successful and very rapidly, and also to manage all of a sudden a Chinese and a Taiwanese team. So if you know the Dutch culture and you know the Taiwanese culture, these two could be more worlds apart.
Yeah.
And I was very proud that I could bring the people all on the same page, that we could align each other on the same targets. And it was really a high performance international team.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very happy and very proud about it.
Okay. And to just touch on that then, how difficult was it managing the two totally separate cultures and bringing them together, especially in a joint venture situation?
The difficulty actually was in the European culture, if you manage a project, you have a project manager.
Mm-hmm.
The project manager does everything that he has to do in order to make a project a success. And if there are obstacles or problems popping up, the project manager is supposed to solve them. And if after a certain period of time he cannot do that, he's escalating. In Taiwan, it's different because you're a project manager, there's a problem, and immediately you escalate. It's not that you are supposed to solve the problem, it's the way that the higher hierarchy is doing the problem solving. And it's escalated and escalated and escalated, and all of a sudden, it's on the desk of the CEO. Something on the European culture was very unusual and something to get used to.
Okay. And so, other than the cultural aspect within that opportunity, what have been the biggest challenges that you faced?
The key challenges were certainly to align the European team, because as a matter of fact, we did have operations in Europe, but from a cost perspective, electronics manufacturing in Europe is questionable.
Okay.
And in the course of the joint, I inherited a huge factory in China, and all the electronics manufacturing has been transferred to China step by step.
Mm-hmm.
And also products that originally I had outsourced, all of a sudden I insourced again because we had lots of SMD lines in China sitting idle.
Okay.
So this was really something interesting, and the European team at the beginning was very reluctant. And I have to say, not everybody liked what we were doing, but in a big company like Philips, there's most all of the time a spot for everybody. So if it's not in this venture, it's someplace else. So this is the good thing about a company like Philips.
Okay. And so, if we look at some of the companies that you've worked at, as you mentioned, HP Pelzer, Philips, Faurecia, where would you say has been your most enjoyable moments or your most enjoyable role out of those companies?
The most enjoyable for me was Faurecia Interior Systems North America, because it was a big challenge. And yes, I've been doing restructuring in the past, but first of all, it was a big environment. We're talking about a turnover of 1.4 billion, the biggest challenge I've ever been having, with a very fragmented team that hasn't been receiving the responsibility they needed to have in order to execute. And I'm somebody who delegates and who trusts the people to do what they have to do. And I expect them, if things are tending to move out of control, that they inform me in advance and we look for a solution. And to bring this culture across, this took a while, but it was very well appreciated. And I would say it's in the DNA of Americans anyway.
Okay, I understand. And so, if we're looking at, say, the challenges you faced within the Faurecia business, what were the key challenges that you faced within that role?
First of all, lots of plants where the Foratia excellence system has been implemented, but not lived. And I had a couple of plants in the southern part of the US where preventive maintenance was a disaster. And we had to go through a huge mentality shift. And we did training, and again training, and lots of communication. And for me, it doesn't make no difference if somebody from the southern part of the US or the northern part of the US or Mexico. We are all in the same boat, and we needed to solve the issues. Else, the customers would have kicked our butts and desourced us for the next years.
Okay.
So we had to have a certain sense of urgency.
No, I understand. And if we're looking at a transformation, then, or we look at, for instance, future-proofing an organization, what would you say the key topics are to any successful transformation?
The most important, and many are underestimating it, you have to bring the people behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And this means, as a CEO, CRO, or COO, communication, and communication again is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm talking about communication, I'm not talking about email communication or communication by phone. I'm talking about showing your face, talk with the people on site, make town hall meetings on a regular basis, and share the issues with the people, which is not the easiest thing, because the people most all of the time when it's about restructuring are concerned about their future well-being, and these town hall meetings can be very aggressive.
Yeah.
I don't say I liked it, but I felt the need to do it, and I felt the need to be confronted by the people. And I have to say, walk the talk is the most important thing that you do. And if the people think you have a hidden agenda, you lost it. And you cannot accomplish nothing if you do not have the people behind you.
Okay. And from someone speaking from experience, how is it you get the workforce, the people, the talent behind you, and get them bought into your strategy to achieve the end goal?
First of all, it's about trust building, because you come into a company as a new guy, and everybody thinks, well, what is his agenda? And it takes time until they believe you. And they start to believe you as soon as you can show the first small successes.
Right.
I mean, we have a culture when it's about restructuring that we are complaining how bad things are. But what is important also, we need to celebrate the success. This is always forgotten. And if something is running extremely well, why the hell not have a small little party in the office, have some cake and Coke or pizza, and just celebrate what you have accomplished? And this helps a lot.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, if you do the celebration together with the people, they recognize that you are a touchable guy, which is important.
Okay. And so that's the talent side, the people. What other aspects of a transformation are key for success?
It's every once in a while you need to have the involvement of the customers, and the story in some elements might be different than the story you tell to the employees. You need to potentially realign the management team, and you need to define clear targets. But I'm a big fan to say, if we define targets, we need to define targets that are achievable.
Yeah.
Because if you are thinking about something, everybody says, oh, he doesn't know nothing about this. And then it's not motivating, but demotivating. And it's important that you're not hiding in an office space, but that you're around on a regular basis. They need to get to know you.
Okay. And then how is it within this aspect that you would, as a leader, say as a CEO of a business or a CEO of a global organization, how is it that you deal with the different aspects culturally throughout a transformation? Because there's areas such as the US that's well renowned for being more gung ho, kind of jumping in head first, and other areas such as, say, for instance, Germany or even France that are more strategic in their view. So how do you kind of get the best of both worlds?
It's a tricky question because when we talk about France and Spain, for instance, the unions are very strong and sometimes very aggressive, and you cannot do nothing without the buy-in of the unions. Talk about Germany, it's a bit easier, but if we talk about restructuring, and restructuring sometimes goes along with cutting back the workforce. So then we're talking about money, and it's costly. In the US, it's easier, but not as easy as many think, because also here it costs some money. Then my last experience, Switzerland. Switzerland, in many aspects, is similar to the US. You can do everything in a rather short period of time, but again, it costs money. And then when we talk about Asia, Asia is a very hierarchical environment. And if the CEO says, well, guys, listen, this is what we need to do, in 99% of the cases, the people do what you say they need to do. So that's the big difference. But on the other side, what you need to do when you go into restructuring, always try to put yourself in the shoes of the other side of the table, and treat the people the same way you want to be treated if you would sit on the other side.
Okay.
And it can be that despite all the open communication, you cannot share everything, and you can eliminate things for sure, but never ever lie to the people. Because if you lie, you lost it. You completely lost it.
Okay, I understand. And what would you say have been the most successful transformations throughout your career? In which roles would they have been in?
I think the most successful transformation, as far as I'm concerned, was Philips Automotive lamps. Because when I started, we had an EBIT of 3.8 to 4.2% with a turnover of 600 million euro. And when I left the company with an EBIT of 17%, with an equal turnover. And I have to say, I was trying to duplicate my accomplishment at Philips Automotive Lamps, but I was never able, again, to make an EBIT of 17%. Two-digit, meaning 10 or 11%, yes, but 17, I was never able to duplicate this success again.
So what made that so successful? What is it you did, and what is it that was implemented for you to achieve that?
First of all, I did establish a very strong project management office. And the guy I made responsible for the project management office, he was a hard worker, and he was breaking down the whole project in many, let's say, micro work packages. And so everybody could see what he has to bring to the table in order to make it a success. And let me give you an example. We had one factory in Recife in Brazil, approximately 450, 500 employees. And the products were actually signaling lamps. And signaling lamps is a commodity. And it doesn't make sense to do it in Latin America. We needed to transfer it to the factory in Songji in China. And again, here communication was important. And the plant manager, he was related to the district governor of Recife. And this helped a lot. the district governor was opening many channels, supporting the people to find new employment. And I have to say, if you can manage the hope and fear of people, it's going to be a success.
Mm-hmm.
But if you cannot fulfill the hope of people, you're going to fail. And until the last day of the opening of the factory, the employees were working like nothing happened. And within half a year, 87% of the employees had a new job. So this is what I consider a success.
Mm-hmm.
Also, in East Germany, we had a factory which actually didn't make sense because at Philips, we did have plenty of capacity.
Yeah.
So I took the opportunity and divested the company in East Germany to a private equity company.
Mm-hmm.
And this was actually the best move we could do because they were used to work with medium-sized companies. And it fit better into the medium-sized structure than it was fitting into the Philips structure. And the question was, do we close the factory or not?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody from the employee side was happy that we could divest. The mayor of the city was happy. The politicians were happy. The unions were happy. So this is what I consider a successful transformation.
Okay, I understand. And so when you're looking at that success and moving into another role, another business, another challenge, as you mentioned, you wanted to replicate the 17%, for instance, but what you would be putting into that, is that the same kind of baseline in terms of the things you'll try to implement, or is it unique to the situations?
Um, I would dare to say more than 80% is similar.
Okay.
And what you need to do, or let's say what you need to do, I'm not giving advice here, what I'm doing. Um, I'm looking intensively in the P&L
Mm-hmm.
of the last month's future prognosis. I'm talking with the F&A guys, and then I do intensive factory walkthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
And then together with the management team, normally I'm doing workshops 1.5, 2 days to share my findings, to share my ideas. And um, I'm not a guy who says I have all the wisdom of the world,
Mm-hmm.
the knowledge of all of them, because in the end, many of them, they have seen, oh, this is running wrong. This is not the right way forward. And then we come up with a plan. And in this plan, we define action holders. And then it's all about execution.
Mm-hmm.
Execution and be physical available. And again, I cannot repeat myself enough and enough. Never hide behind your desk.
Yep. Okay, and so one thing that's interesting for me to understand, I'm sure for the people watching will be as well, but what is it you as a leader then are looking for when you're going on these walkthroughs?
Um, can you repeat the last sentence again, please?
So you mentioned kind of you do extensive walkthroughs, whether it's through plants, through the organization. Kind of what is it you're looking for instance, if you're walking through a plant and you know that there's something that needs to be done?
Well, I'm looking for efficiencies or inefficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
And when you walk a factory um, and you have some experience in factories, you recognize rather soon where there are inefficiencies.
Okay.
Second is, I'm also looking into quality figures because we're in an industry where quality is a must.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're messing up with the quality, you lost, and you pay so much money as compensation, you destroy the business. And last but not least, I want active participation of the people employed.
Mm-hmm.
For me, everybody has something that adds value to the table.
Mm-hmm.
This is something where you need to motivate the people to come up with their ideas. And maybe the idea is not good or cannot be implemented or whatever, but at least it shows the dedication of the employees if they present you with ideas. That's important.
Okay.
And it's also a signal for them that you take them serious and that you feel irrelevant in what hierarchical level they are working, they are important.
Okay, no, I understand that. And so if we look at the industry today, what's your viewpoint on the industry currently? Because we've been in such an uncertain time of COVID. We're now just coming out of a second wave, so to say. So what has been your view on the industry thus far?
From my point of view, many companies are in a really desperate situation. They are currently supported by government money, but the worst would be to postpone the necessary restructuring forever, because government money is going to be over sometime soon. And I can only recommend to do the necessary steps now. And the sooner you do it, the better it is. And yes, restructuring is most all of the time not necessarily nice, but if it helps the company to survive, it helps also to guarantee as many as possible employee relations for the company.
Okay, and what do you see being the biggest challenges ahead for tier one, tier two suppliers following this COVID aspect?
I think first, before we go into COVID, the important thing is there's a high level of insecurity in the industry, because are we going to have combustion engines in the future still or not? Are we going to have hydrogen engine, or are we going to have 100% EVs? From my point of view, we're going to have a combination of all three means. And this consequently means the tier ones, they have to adapt. And if you are, let's say, a tier one who's doing only engine blocks, nice, he's certainly having competences, but he needs to be aware that in the next, let's say, 3, 4, 5 years, the business is going to go down tremendously.
Yeah.
And I would always recommend to use the remaining time for alternative products. And there's so much possible in the automotive environment, but if you are just sitting there and wait for things to happen, you're already on the losing track.
Okay. And so you just mentioned a huge topic within the industry. How long will the combustion engine last? What will be the future? Will it be hybrid solutions, full electric solutions? Will it be fuel cells? So from your side, as someone that's led businesses, led multiple different products, what is your viewpoint on where the industry will go in terms of those three technologies?
I think combustion engines, as pure combustion engines, they will go down. I think hybrid vehicles, hydrogen vehicles, and EVs are going to be the predominant vehicles in the future. But we shouldn't forget that there's a huge installed basis of combustion engine driven vehicles in the world.
Yeah.
And I don't think any government can all of a sudden stop that those cars are driven. So there's going to be a transition period, and I would say we're talking here about 15, 20 years minimum. The good thing about hydrogen vehicles is basically you can use all the elements from a combustion engine while using hydrogen power. Okay. So this will help the industry very much. And has the industry been sleeping in the past? Difficult to say. On the other side, when you look at a diesel engine, France and Germany, for instance, they were the technology drivers on the diesel technology. And I'm still a firm believer there's so much that you can do in order to improve the efficiency and the exhaust emission of a diesel engine, so that I would really say it would be terrible if the diesel engine would be completely disbanded. Okay. There's still lots of potential.
Yeah, no, but something you touched on, that if we're looking at the aspect of the electric vehicle, or even the hydrogen aspect, infrastructure is going to be a huge topic. But if you were somebody now going into a supplier that just focused on making engines, would that be your focus in terms of future-proofing their organization, looking at product diversification? How can we get this business into the fuel cell business, or what would be the steps you would take?
If it would be a company like the one you have been describing, I would see to get a good understanding of the competences available. Because you can do engine blocks or pistons or crankshafts, whatever. You know how to treat metal and how to manipulate metal. So this is of value because first of all, you can consider to transfer the business into aftermarket because, as I said, there's a huge installed base. And if I can work with aluminum lightweight and all this stuff, I can also use lightweighting for frames or whatever. So I wouldn't easily give up. I would see what are the competences and how much money would I have to invest in order to make a transformation. Or it can also be that I say, well, sorry, but we have to close down in 3, 4, 5 years.
Okay.
Fact is, whatever you want to do without investment, it's not going to be possible.
Okay. And what would you say, in your opinion, are the product areas currently that are most future-proof, that will be hard to be affected through these changes?
Plastics. If you look at interior, you will continue to have door panels. You will have an instrument panel different than today, but you will still use the plastics. You will have most likely decorative parts inside the car. You will have bumpers. Maybe you have spoilers. So I would say plastics is relatively future-proof, but also when it's about seating. Seating, talking about lightweight aluminum frames. Then we talk about light foam for the seat cushion and seat backrest. And then we talk about different materials, either recycled materials for the fabric or leather look-alike. So these 3 businesses, for me, is really future-proof.
Okay, no, I understand. And for you then, when we're looking at kind of product areas that you've been in, that you've found most interesting, that you've got to a point of where they are now, what would you say those products have been? Because you mentioned seating, you've mentioned lamps. What's been the most interesting product for you?
Interesting for me was acoustic absorbent products, because nobody is thinking about it, but everybody has it in his car. And there are so many opportunities to reduce noise emission inside the car, but also outside. And there's so much opportunity to lightweight acoustic absorbent material, which nobody is really thinking about. So this was really, really interesting for me. At automotive playback modules, actually the thing is, the CD mechanisms is dying. Slowly, but slowly it's dying. And you have internet in the car. You can stream music, whatever you want. So this is a business where I wouldn't put my money on. When it's lighting, here we need to separate between current lighting, which is halogen and all the like, and OLED and LED. And the penetration of LED and OLED is amazingly fast. Nevertheless, again, coming back, we still have a huge installed basis of existing vehicles with H4 light and all that stuff, H7, H10, 11. So the aftermarket is still going to be a good business. So a scenario, last man standing, could be very attractive. Well, yeah. Then when I look at sealing business, sealing will continue to be around. And if we're talking about EVs, it's even more important to have good sealings to reduce the noise level. And also for acoustic absorbent products, you need to think how to reduce the noise level significantly. So these two businesses are future-proof. When you then look at seats, you will always have seats.
Yeah.
Lighter. Many of the safety devices, in the meantime, are delegated into the seat. So also here, this is future-proof. When you look at decoration combination with light, this is going to be the market. It starts already because every car, at least from the premium side, is having so many devices with ambient lighting. So if you can combine plastics with ambient lighting, you're on the winning track. So honestly speaking, I'm not too concerned about the automotive supplier business because there's so much competence available. And I guess the current discussion going on about environment, reduction of fuel, reduction of energy, this supported different companies to think about new technologies. And I don't think that the supplier industry is going to die. They're going to go a very difficult time and a very costly time. And I don't think that everybody is going to survive. But I think and I hope that the ones who survive are going to come out stronger than before the automotive crisis and the COVID-19 crisis.
Okay. And if we're looking at what we just mentioned in terms of new technologies, do you think there will be something moving forward that there'll be a new technology that comes up that can rival these, or do you think we're pretty much there when it comes to hydrogen, electric, or diesel?
I think there's still potential because I guess the battery capacity is still something where there's lots of potential. Because what is currently still hampering the penetration with EVs is the long loading time of a battery and the short driving distance you can do. And if you have a battery that enables you to drive 1,000 kilometers, then you have it. And if you can reduce the loading time of battery, let's say to 5 to 10 minutes, then you have it. But infrastructure is a tricky point because I'm not sure that the electronic grid we are having is suitable for hundreds of thousands of loading stations. And this is something I guess the governments need to globally think through in detail.
Okay. No, I understand that. And I think that's something that is on the question of everybody globally, because you've got kind of Lucid Motors with their Lucid Air that has a 500 plus capacity at the moment in terms of mileage, but it does come down to the infrastructure aspect, kind of how quickly can you charge your car without having to have an enormous battery. I think that's something that moving forward, the technology will come down. I think if we're looking at service stations, etc., there's only going to be so many parking spaces for so many cars. If they take 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour to kind of charge, then there's always going to be people that are left stuck.
Yeah. I think when you drive a gas engine car, filling up a tank takes between 1 minute and 2 minutes. So this is a target. Is it achievable with electric cars? I don't know. But I guess the maximum should be something like 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, I agree. And coming back to the kind of transformation aspect, Manfred, one thing that I know you mentioned to any of the successes you've had throughout the companies you've been in terms of transformations, improvements, have been the people, the talent within the organization. So for you, has it always been a case of when you're going into a new opportunity, having to bring new talent in, or is there ways that you mentor and build existing talent?
When I move into a company, the first thing I'm trying to do is work with the existing teams. So I'm not taking many months to continue with the team if it doesn't fly. And if I do not feel that they are motivated to do what they need to do, I need to make a change. But my priority is always to work with the existing teams.
And for you moving into a new company, then, as we know, prior to you maybe arriving, there could be individuals that have been in the company for a number of years. And in terms of the changes you'll make to better the company, it may not be something that they're used to. So how do you go about kind of coaching or guiding these guys through the change to understand if they can be a success within your new organization?
Actually, I'm a big fan of workshops.
Okay.
Sometimes I do workshops by myself, and sometimes it's important to have an outside coach who sees things in a different way that I see it. Because let's face the fact, sometimes as a manager, you see things the way you want them to be seen. And independent advice, independent coaching is an important element. And it's not that I'm shy of difficult decisions, but I want everybody to have a second chance.
Yep.
And if the coach says, well, listen, I talked with this guy, I evaluated his performance, I evaluated how it works in the team. I don't think he will be a guy for the future. Then we need to make a change.
Okay. And what would you say then, thus far through your career, the biggest achievements have been?
I think one of the biggest achievements was certainly the turnaround of HP Pelzer in the beginning. Because the company was debt-ridden, intensively debt-ridden, and we could convince customers to stay close with us. We were very openly communicating what the situation is. And despite the negative situations, the customers were still requesting new proposals for new products. So they didn't let us down. And last but not least, the company is still existing, right? It must have been good. Metzler was a different subject because Metzler was a company that has been bought together. And, actually, we had Metzler, but we had 5 or 6 or 7 Metzler, depending on the region you were talking about. And this was difficult to see to make one company out of it. And since it hasn't been done for 5, 6, 8 years, this was really difficult to bring the people on board. Philips, it was do or die because automotive playback modules was no longer strategic for Philips. So either we could find a solution or not. We found a solution with the Taiwanese joint venture, and it was also a good learning experience for some to better understand the Asian culture. And in the end, we really became a strong global team. So as you may have heard from what I've been saying, I'm always trying to bring out the best of the different individuals.
Okay. And for you then, for instance, if we look at HP Pelzer, you mentioned that it was very negative, it was losing money, but you managed to keep the trust of the customer. Was that purely just through your transparency of the situation, or what do you think the key driver to those guys sticking by you would have been?
Well, I guess it's also a matter of relationship, because I had the customer interface before I moved to Pelzer, so they knew me, and they knew me that I'm honest with them, and I'm not using the misery in my favor.
Okay.
So I told them what I could tell them. I was transparent what we are doing and how we are doing. And I insisted on having regular customer interface to tell them about the progress of the measures we are taking. And as a matter of fact, important were also the bank meetings. We had monthly bank meetings where we also had to present our, I'm not calling it restructuring plan, I'm calling it a get well plan.
Okay.
But again, it all comes back to proper communication. Depending on who you have to communicate to, you have to have different communications for each audience, but you need to do it.
Okay. And similarly to the cultural aspect that you mentioned earlier, when dealing with different customers, is it a similar approach compared to kind of approaching VW compared to approaching, let's say, FCA?
Basically, I would always recommend to have a more or less same approach, because the customers are talking with each other.
Yeah.
And the worst that would happen is you talk with Volkswagen Group, you're painting a picture, and then you talk the next day with, let's say, BMW, and you give them a different story. And if they talk with each other and they recognize that you're giving different stories to different customers, they doubt that you're really knowledgeable about what you're doing, and they doubt that they can trust you. And if the customers don't trust you, you lost it also.
Okay. And if we're looking at transformations or turnarounds, is it always to do with the profit of a business or the money making aspect? Or is there other aspects of a transformation that company could be profitable, but they need to transform their culture or they need to transform something else? What would you say the key elements have been?
I guess profit is the ultimate target. Because if you're not profitable, you cannot survive in the long term. But in order to be profitable, it's also about culture. You need to have good product, period. There's no debating about it. You need to have good processes. But you also need to have the buy-in of the people, and they need to understand why things have to be done the way they are being currently done. It's not that I go in there and say, well, listen, stupid buggers, why haven't you done this in the past? Everybody did the best that he could. And in many cases, it were management issues that made the profit of a company deteriorate. And then cash management is key, and also getting the projects ready in a suitable time frame in order to get the payments from the customers. So actually, profit is the utmost, but there are different layers underneath it that you also need to focus.
Okay. And one thing, obviously, we have our relationship from the Wireplast opportunity, and Callum obviously has a relationship from successfully working with you into that position. But when we look at that role as the CEO type role or the regional leadership roles, would you say the main difference is? Is it just now having the full responsibility of a business, or what would you say the key differences would be for somebody that wants to aspire to that or is not in one of those roles just yet?
I guess it's an issue of the mentality of the individual. And if you have the full responsibility, from my point of view, this is the optimum situation. Of course, if you have the full responsibility, you are also on the grill. But I guess the most fulfilling in the job you are doing is if you can identify changes and make the changes happen.
Okay, I understand. And for you, would you say then that from when first stepping into the industry to now that you've achieved all that you set out to achieve, or is there still things that you want to tick off?
Well, actually, I really like what I'm doing. And if possible, I would like to continue with what I'm doing. I would like to share my know-how and competence with others. And honestly speaking, I could work until I die, because I really like what I'm doing.
And for you, is it more, what's most interesting for you, Manfred? Is it more having the consultant type roles? Is it more business leading? What would be the aspects that make you tick the most?
I guess it's a combination, because when you are new in a company, irrelevant as a permanent or an interim, first it's consulting, because consulting means you look into the company, you identify the issues, and then you step back as a consultant and take an active part by being the CEO, COO, or the CRO, really active role. So it's actually both goes together, you know.
Okay. And with yourself personally, is the most interesting challenges one that you've had similarly previously, walking into a struggling business or a business that's in some sort of danger and turning that around? Or is it a case of now you want to go in and grow something? What is the most interesting aspect from that point of view?
For me, it's to bring the company back on track.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's back on track, we can talk about growing business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually what I've been doing at White Plus,
Yeah.
by acquiring a small company in order to combine plastics with light.
Mm-hmm.
So first you need to restructure, and then you can grow.
Okay, so that's a key element to any aspect, is getting the foundations right before obviously growing an organization.
Right.
Okay, and another thing then for yourself, obviously worked globally, been part of many different countries in terms of residency. So what does work-life balance look like for you, Manfred? How do you keep that?
Well, actually, it may sound strange when I say that. Since I like very much what I'm doing, I consider it also to be part of a hobby of mine. And other than this, I'm a car guy. I'm very much into classic cars, classic cycles, and this is really relaxing. And on the weekend, take out one of the classic cars, cruise on the River Rhine. You don't need more.
Okay, perfect. So from that side of you, then kind of the automotive industry is in the blood, whether that's on 4 wheels or 2 wheels.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was thinking about moving out of the automotive industry, but I guess for non-automotive guys, to have an automotive guy, this is complicated, because automotive guys talk different, work different. I don't say that it wouldn't be beneficial for a non-automotive company, but we have been talking lots of time about culture. I guess here we're talking also about the culture, the non-automotive culture and the automotive culture.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is a debate, because even from a staffing standpoint, from our standpoint, is that we have customers that are split between automotive and say industrial, for instance. And even within their industrial business, it's slightly a slower pace. So they really like to try and inject the automotive blood into there to really inject that pace, inject the decision making to really grow those businesses. So it shows just how fast paced the industry is.
I mean, when I was at Lighton, I was in the supervisory board of Lighton IT, and Lighton IT used to be the biggest producer of storage space for PCs.
Okay.
And in the automotive environment, you know it as well as I do, we're talking about scrap rates of 10, 15, maybe 20 ppm. In the non-automotive environment, we talk about a fall-off rate in the range of 1.5 to 2%. Calculate this into ppm, and you fell flat on your back. Different environment, but interesting. Yes.
Okay, and then Manfred, obviously we've discussed kind of where the industry is going in terms of technology, but what do you see the future of the industry being as a whole? How do you see it looking maybe in 15 to 20 years?
I think the OEMs are currently in the process of reinventing themselves.
Okay.
And reinvention in this case means currently they produce the cars, they give it to a dealer, and the dealer sells the car to the individual. I guess in the future, and I don't know how soon the future is going to happen, the dealership is going to be excluded completely.
Okay.
I think, I mean, take a look at Tesla, for instance. You rarely find a Tesla dealer, right?
Yeah.
Buy the cars through the internet. And I think from a margin perspective, why should a third party make a margin if you as an OEM can make it as well? And Tesla does it very successful. Why shouldn't an OEM do it? And then the second thing is, and I see a trend coming right now. Is it really that car companies are going to sell cars, or are they going to put cars on loan?
Okay, so you think the ride sharing aspect, kind of the fleet management aspect, is something that's going to be.
Yeah, but, I mean, what would you say if I would offer you, well, listen, what kind of cars do you like? And you would say, oh, in summertime I like a convertible. In wintertime I would like to have an SUV. And say, okay, listen, for a monthly fee of so and so many pounds, you're going to have a convertible from March to, let's say, September, and then you're going to have an SUV for the same price. Would this be attractive to you?
Yeah, I think in anybody's case, I think it's kind of another play on the leasing model or the rental model they have now. So I think that could be an interest. I think that's something that is happening a lot, say within the Bay Area, etc. Kind of the rideshare aspect. But we was unsure of how this pandemic aspect would affect that. Would people be comfortable getting in cars after other people during something like this?
Well, I mean, the pandemic is going to be over sometime, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
And the question for me is, when will we be able to come back to normal again? Are we ever going to come back to the time before the pandemic, or is it going to be something in between? And when you read newspaper articles, the journalists and the specialists, they say coming back to before the pandemic, before 2023, 2024, is rather unlikely. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't.
Yeah, I think a lot of things have changed. Even if we look at in the industry now, remote working is something that is going to be a lot higher on the agenda, which reduces some travel. Even now, doing this conversation over a Zoom call, so to say, will be the future in terms of different things. But I think the human interaction is something that always needs to take place, especially on a face-to-face basis. But Manfred, coming back to you and the businesses you've worked with, who would you say has been for you the most inspirational leader that you've worked with or worked for?
Actually, I was thinking about it, and I had a hard time to define my answer.
Okay.
And then I said, well, the most leader actually is Patrick Koller, the CEO of Faurecia. He's a difficult person, everyone. He's very pushy. He's very aggressive. But when he has something in his mind, when he has a strategy in his mind, he executes. And he executes rigorously. He's supporting his people if needed. He's kicking his people if needed also, sometimes even if not needed. But from an inspirational perspective, he was the most interesting person to work for.
Okay. And if you're looking at either somebody just getting into the industry or somebody in the industry now that aspires to take a similar route to you in terms of functions that you've had and get into that CEO role, what would your advice be for those guys?
What I always would recommend is step into something that you like. Because if you like something, you are good at what you're doing. And don't start going to a company and say, well, After 3 years, I want to become a department manager. After 6 years, I want to become, I don't know. Focus on the challenges ahead of you and make the best out of it and do successful what you're doing. And then you're going to be promoted step by step.
Okay. Manfred, there's a question I like to ask kind of to finish off the conversations before we wrap up. And for me, this podcast is all about executives at future-proof organizations. So that organization will continue and continue and continue. But there gets to a point where we talk about legacy. And what would you want to be remembered for? And what do you want Manfred Kwade's legacy to look like?
What I would like to, and I hope many will agree to what I'm saying, that they say he can be tough if needed, but he's a human guy, and he treats everybody with respect and promotes them and coaches them to the maximum of their capabilities. And I would also like to be remembered as somebody who sticks to commitment. And if I say, well, listen, this is what I'm intending to do, it's going to take so and so long. I want also my subordinates to stick to commitments. Because you can only be successful if you stick to commitments. And as a matter of fact, I want to be recognized as somebody who's fair to his employees.
Okay, perfect. Well, Manfred, it's been an absolute pleasure from my side speaking with you today, being able to share your story. Is there anything you would like to leave the conversation with, or should we wrap up on understanding what your legacy should be?
I think we have covered so many elements in the period of time we have been having. From my point of view, there's nothing I think we should add.
Perfect. Well, Manfred, it's been
nothing is popping.
Thank you so much for your time, Manfred, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate it very much.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.